great. And that's so aligned with becoming future ready. All right. So, without delay, let's go ahead and dive in. But first, a few brief housekeeping notes. Throughout this session, please feel free to continue to add your reactions and comments in the chat. We would love for this to be a fully engaged and truly peer-led conversation. My colleague Nicole will be monitoring the chat. We'll also leave time for audience questions towards the end of today's session. Please be sure to ask your questions throughout by using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And as a quick reminder, we'll be announcing the winners of the Coffee on Us giveaway at the end of today's session. So if you haven't yet entered, simply follow Giveffect on LinkedIn, find a next related post, and in the comments tag Giveffect and share one thing you've learned or hope to learn during Next 2026, including the hashtag Next 2026. All right, let's get started. Over the past 2 days, we've explored what future-ready nonprofits are doing differently. We've talked about long-term vision, aligning systems, diversifying revenue, scaling without burnout, and stronger collaboration across teams. And now the question becomes, how do you actually lead that change inside your own organization? Because the reality is, most nonprofits don't struggle with ideas. They struggle with making those ideas stick. I'm sure we can all relate there. Turning insight into action, turning alignment into execution, turning intention into real sustainable change. And when we say change, we're not just talking about one thing. It might be implementing a new nonprofit tech, such as a CRM, fundraising platform, or an all-in-one platform. Shifting how fundraising, marketing, and programs work together. Redesigning internal processes or workflows. Launching new revenue strategies like recurring giving or peer-to-peer. Or simply trying to get your team aligned around a clear way of working. In many cases, technology is part of that change, but it's really in service of something bigger: better visibility, stronger alignment, more effective execution. If the first 2 days were about what's possible, this final session is about what it takes to make that a reality inside your organization. And this is why we created Next. Next is presented by Giveffect. For those of you who may not be familiar, Giveffect is an all-in-one nonprofit platform that brings together the tools organizations need to operate effectively, including donor management, volunteer management, CRM, marketing, and more. Our goal is to help nonprofits run more smoothly, improve operational efficiency, strengthen financial stability, and ultimately further your mission. And with that, I'm really excited to introduce our speaker. Melissa Goodson is Chief Development and Communications Officer at Jewish Family Services of Washtenaw County. She is also the founder of BeeGood Consulting, where she works with nonprofits navigating change. Melissa brings both the internal leadership perspective and external advisory lens, which is exactly what makes this conversation so valuable. Melissa, I'd love to start by having you introduce yourself a bit more and sharing about your roles at JFS and BeeGood and types of the changes you've led.
Tara, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I know we are kind of coming to end of some sessions. We're at the end of the day. We might be having that little drowsiness after the lunch period. So we're hoping to keep this really high energy today with some solid takeaways related to change. So as Tara said, I'm Melissa Goodson, Chief Development and Communications Officer at Jewish Family Services based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And also the founder of BeeGood Fundraising Consulting, where we go from transactional to transformational fundraising, just practically and in a leadership kind of way. And I have over 20 years of experiences working with super teeny tiny 3 people nonprofits to behemoths of university nonprofits to medical to voluntary health organizations. And all I have to say is that change and leading through change in all of those organizations is it is it's just a part of the work that has to be done if you want to stay relevant in the world, if you want to stay relevant with your stakeholders, with your donors, and with your clients. And whether you're navigating change as far as technology is concerned, or a cultural change, or a merger change, or a leadership change, or even a change personally that you're going through yourself, you've got to figure out how to manage and navigate through all of that. And so, hopefully, today we'll leave you with a couple of takeaways about how to embrace that change and make it stick, make it successful. One of the things that we all have heard, I think, before, is that the only thing constant in life is change. But I have a quote that I'd like to pull up here in just a second, share with you all about how can we reframe that mindset just a little bit. So give me 1 second to share my screen. All right, here we go. Let's see if we're good to share. So as we go through today, I really would love all of us to focus on this, that the secret to change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, kind of the what has been, and why, teach the old dog new tricks, but really focusing on building the new and what opportunities lie within them. So thank you, Tara, and we'll take it from there.
Great, thank you. That perspective of change, being constant, really does resonate, especially with everything we've been discussing throughout the summit so far, yesterday and today. So let's dive into our first question. Melissa, one of the things that often happens after a summit like this is people leave energized, but not everything turns into action. From your experience, what determines whether ideas actually turn into real sustained change?
Yes. So I know I am just coming off of a conference last week, and I know that I absorbed so much that my brain wants to just explode with information, but sometimes you don't know where to go with it and what to do with it. And so, as you have taken away what you've learned the last couple of days here, I would really suggest for all of you to think about just small micro changes that you can make, or pick two or three things, a small amount of things that you would like to have conversations about potentially implementing. And then from there, really determine what is the impact of this change that you're trying to hope to make? And if it is positive forward steps, how are you celebrating those steps? How are you measuring those steps? How are you tracking the progress over time? And ultimately, how are you celebrating those wins as you start to implement that change? So if you take these in tiny doses, you're more likely to be able to implement some of that effective change, as opposed to just taking it all and trying to figure out where to brain dump it to. You can always come back to some of those ideas. You can always start implementing things and realize it's the wrong direction to go. But if you can make it a little bit smaller and celebrate along the way, that's would be my suggestions to you all.
Yeah, one thing I actually personally do is I have a kind of a, I call it my parking lot of ideas or things I want to do where all the ideas I have, I'll just put on that paper or that document so I don't forget about it. But then to what you said, I'm picking and choosing which couple to really start implementing on sooner than later.
Right.
Um, and what separates organizations that follow through from those that lose momentum?
Well, I think that it really has to do with activating that change. And really the communication, the getting the buy-in, the why are we making this change from the get-go? And that has to be developed in so many different ways and through so many different people. And momentarily we'll get to a little guide that talks about kind of who is even allowed to make change happen at your organization. Um, and do you know, like, kind of the hierarchy of what size of change or how implemented, or how how big the change would be versus to who can make it versus how small the change could be and who can make it. But it really starts with that communication. So you've been at Next this whole week. You've heard something that has inspired you. You'd like to take that back to your leadership, or you are the leadership. Or it was just a hint of an idea that sounded interesting to you, and you'd like to figure out how to implement some of that change. I saw earlier in the chat box that a handful of you are really interested in implementing monthly giving options for your donors, which is great. So you want to take that change and have the communication with whoever is going to be involved with helping and supporting you make that change. Think about it as like your org chart of people who are going to support making this change happen. And I don't mean org chart like that HR has out on a platform that says you report to who, you report to who, but who's a part of your collective team that's going to help you make that change. And are they aligned with you that this change is necessary? So when you have to create your case for change, why is it a pain point that we have and why would it be beneficial for us to change it? What communication styles are you working with? Are you working with somebody that needs to be involved with your change management that is intimately involved in details and needs subject matter expert information, needs case study after case study before they'll make that information change? Is it your finance person who needs to know like what's the return on investment when this? Are we going to save money or are we going to spend more money? But if we spend more money, how will that affect the organization later? Will we have a strong return on investment? Do you have a visionary that you work with that just says every idea is a great idea, go run with it, and then a second later they go down another change path? Um, are you working with a team that's already gone through massive change, whether it's like cultural or leadership or is struggling and is just kind of de-energized at work? Like, are you working with a team that the buy-in isn't strong already? And ultimately, moving through all of this, you are going to want to make sure that everybody's a part who is a part of that org chart is part of this change activation that you're going to make happen. And really, as with the screen that's on this, the slide that's on the screen right now, this is in theory, just creating SMART goals. I know many of us are very familiar with those. But really, what's your goal? What do you want to achieve? Make sure it's very clear and make sure that it's supported by your team. You kind of create your cheerleading group. You might be the coach, but you're creating your cheerleading group around implementing this change. Your objective, how are you going to get to that goal? Action items, make them granular, make them mini, as we mentioned before, so that it's easy for more people to adapt and adopt because change is really difficult for a lot of people. And really, I'm gonna go back to this again, but that why are we doing this? And you really need to know it. You really need to own it. And it should be something that can almost be humorous that people keep going back to, like, oh yeah, we're going back to that change because we know we're one organization, we're an ABC company, and we're number one. Like whatever, uh, whatever energy you want to put behind it, that keeps that positive buy-in.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's dive a little bit deeper into communication because this is where so many change efforts either gain traction or break down, to your point. During a transition, what does clear communication actually look like from a leadership perspective?
It comes from transparency. I am a big fan and big proponent that communication is key and transparency equals trust. And if you're working with a team where you're not quite sure what your North Star is, you're not quite sure why you're moving in the direction that you are, if you're in a space where you don't feel that you can have a voice to express maybe adversity to that change that's happening or offering another alternative idea, it's really, really difficult to implement that change. The times you see change that is very ineffective is when it's one person's idea, one person trying to lead it, one person trying to force it to happen. And you don't have the buy-in of the team, and the team is very unclear of that direction. So communication from the get-go is very important. And again, going back to that, know who you're communicating and what information that they need before helping to implement the change.
Would you say that you see a pattern of where some leaders most often get this wrong?
It's when people are thinking in hierarchy, going back to the HR org chart, not your team of cheerleader org chart, where they think it is their responsibility to make a decision to make the change, and they're not involving everyone. The best leaders that I've ever worked with that have implemented the change, one are really can let their ego go out of the situation where they're really thinking about the mission and the impact and the longevity of the organization over their own ego. And where they are really truly willing to listen and share and let other people lead, kind of, hiring people that are smarter than them. And that's really been the place, especially when you're going through big, big changes, whether it's culture or leadership, maybe it's implementation of a technology tool. But seeing that transparency, that communication from the get-go and getting everyone's buy-in is really the important part.
Oh, so interesting. One thing we've heard consistently over the past 2 days is how much harder change becomes when communication, data, and workflows live in different places, especially when teams are trying to implement something new. From your experience, how important is it to have shared visibility across teams, and what role does the right technology play in making change actually stick?
Yes, I think that you hit the nail on the head there. That when things live in different places and things are siloed, and in this day and age, when we have Google and when we have SharePoint, when we have spaces that are real time editable and real time accessible, there's no reason that most people shouldn't have access to just about everything in your organization, and technology makes that happen. I will share a specific story where that has shown very much in importance. It actually caused some problems at Jewish Family Services. We started working in Giveffect, I think about 2.5, 3 years ago. Um, One of the reasons we went to Giveffect is that all of our CRMs and all of our communications were all in different spots. We were using Constant Contact, we were using Donor Perfect, we were using some random peer-to-peer fundraising software. So, we have clients that we work with, and we have donors that we work with. We have volunteers that everybody was in a different pot. And we're not we were nobody was communicating to each other about it. And we had a volunteer who came in, was working in our pantry, and lots of us were communicating with this person and all of these kind of things. But we had never connected the fact that this person had massive capacity, had a wonderful affinity for the organization, and was part of not only personal capacity, but also a foundation associated with them. And so for years, prior to us putting everything all in one space, we were working with this potential donor, but only in a volunteer capacity. We were never diving deeper into what possibility was there as far as what this person can do. So it wasn't until that we could bring everything together when we moved over to Giveffect that we said, "Oh my gosh, John Smith, wait, that's John Smith in the pantry? Wait, that John Smith? Oh my gosh, we've lost out on 3 years of opportunity of stewarding this person differently or getting to know this person differently. And now that we have this collective information, it's really important. I will tell you, additionally, not only is keeping things in one spot just been incredibly beneficial, it also saves us a whole ton of money, whole lot of time, and the importance of the historical knowledge. When I joined JFS 4 years ago, there was no historical knowledge written anywhere. It's in somebody's notebook somewhere. Or it was, randomly in somebody's brain, and they left, and you had to restart the whole organization, all of the stewardship, all of the relationship building over and over and over again because there was no background on anybody. So we have been implementing slowly but surely across the board, really having people understand the importance of making contact reports or interactions and Giveffect, and then also referencing Giveffect before you go to a meeting. And now our volunteers team and our development team have a monthly meeting where we connect and we run through the list of volunteers. We look at the donor database, we do a well screening, combine them all, and figure out a tactic and a strategy to work with that person.
Thank you. Yes, Melissa, I remember when we first met that 2.5, 3 years ago, and you shared this story with me. And um, at that point, I was like newer to Give Effect and hadn't heard that story as often. But over the years, me personally, and I'm sure other team members could even say this more so from their experience, but we see a lot of this with organizations using Give Effect. When everything lives in one place, leaders can focus on alignment instead of chasing that information. All right, let's move on to our next question. So, as we all know, and we've talked about throughout next, teams are busy, capacity is limited, and yet meaningful change still needs to happen. So, how does a leader know when it's actually time to move forward with a change, whether that's a new system, a new process, or a new approach?
It's really important that leaders spend the time and build in the capacity to do a do a pulse check on your organization on a regular basis. I would imagine I'm going to ask you all to participate with me in the chat for here in a second. So, how many of you have ever worked for an organization or for yourselves or whatever that you've been in a space where the energy is just consistently draining? Throw a one in the chat if you've been in a space that's just been like the energy just feels ugh. Right. All right. So Catherine's saying, yeah, she's been there. I'm imagining some more people will as well. Yeah, here we go. Everybody's popping in. We've
It's all coming in.
I would imagine like, all right, here's a good question. Put a two in there if if you've only been in high energy, perfect organizations. Okay, great.
That is no one.
As I figured. But there are points and times and there are ebbs and flows in the energy of what's going on in an organization. And if a leader has their finger on the pulse of what's going on, you start to see when that energy changes. And you start to see when your leadership feels tired or they're not coming up with new creative ideas or they're not interested in building forward to something new or innovative or just maybe a little bit different. When you get stuck in the mundane or the this is how we've always done it, that's when you really, I mean, before then, you should really be paying attention to that's the time to be making that change. I will share with you that at Jewish Family Services, our leadership has been at the organization for 30 plus years. And and I'm the youngest one on the team that had 4 years, the youngest leader at 4 years at this organization. Um, and I will tell you that implementing change has been successful at this organization because you have a leader who's a huge visionary, but also understands the limitations of not making change going forward. So I would say as a leader, make sure you have the pulse on the energy of your team. If you are always the only one coming up with ideas, and you as the leader are the only one ever coming up with change, that means that you're running in a dictatorship and not in a team setting. And you are much more powerful and much more effective and efficient when you've got the rest of your team behind you that is interested in giving more to create that change.
Um, so interesting. How do you lead that change without overwhelming your team?
You guys are going to hear this. I should go back a slide, right? The the without buy-in, change initiatives are likely to fail. You really, again, need to be working in a team setting. You need to be thinking about the mission of the organization, and you need to realize the emotional, the energy, the time, the money impact of what change requires, and that you have to be reasonable and understanding the people behind making that change. I think that's one thing to key into as well, is that change is difficult, and some people are more ready for change than others, and some people are a little bit more resistant. But you need to be very conscious of that, own that, have the conversation about it. Don't shy away from it. Be transparent about that. This might be an ugly, yucky, murky change that we're going to go through, but we're going to go through it as a team and live that.
Yeah, so interesting. I was just looking in the comments. Someone commented, but we've always done it this way. Like, how many times has someone said that in an organization? I feel like that comes up, and it's like, oh, that makes you cringe a little bit inside because that's what we're trying to change here.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And if you're, I will offer the advice nobody asked me to offer right here. If you're working with leadership that is consistently telling you that this is just how we've always done it and that's how we're going to continue to do that, we'll get later to a bell curve of the death of an organization. I just be aware.
Yes, teasing what's to come. So let's make this even more practical. If a leader decides to move forward with a change, what should the first 30 days realistically look like?
Absolutely. So, one thing I want to bring up, just this is that um, the first 30 days can look very different for each project. Um, 30 days if you're trying to create a new email campaign or a new newsletter. Let's call it a new newsletter. And you're utilizing the tools that are within Giveffect to create your new newsletter. That's something that tangibly can happen in 30 days. But if you are working to create change, a cultural change, there's no way that that's happening in 30 days. So what my point being on this is that timeframes are you can't limit you can not every change falls into that box, right? Every box is going to look very different. But some of the key things that you can have in place so that you can always figure out how to create your own goal and timeline related to that change is, do you have a decision making map? Who is responsible for making what decisions? And then from there, how do you implement who's going to be on your team for making that change? And then how do you create your time related goals associated with that change? So does your organization, um, big or small, have one of these decision making maps? So is it, so this one, just so you know, like the executive team, that's what ET stands for, member decides. So an executive team member says, hey, I really want to implement this new CRM. Okay, that's great. And this is a true example of me. I say, hey, I want to implement Giveffect. Okay, that's great. I can't do that on my own. I have to get the approval from my chief executive officer. I have to get approval from my finance officer. I need to get approval actually from my board that we can buy this software and that we can implement it, and realizing it's going to create lots of change. It's going to create change internally for all of us using this platform for CRM tracking. It's going to change things externally because we use this platform to do all of our volunteer management. So our 700 plus volunteers we work with annually are going to feel the impact of that change. Our staff, it's a new system. It's a new process for them to put in information into a system. We got to do the whole data transfer, right? So like all of that is a part of making this change. But if I was to just go and call Tara and say, "Hey Tara, hey, it's Melissa from JFS. I want Giveffect. Here's my credit card." The changes isn't going to be effective. It might be great for me, but I don't have the buy-in of everybody else, and I have totally disintegrated the hierarchy of decision making at the organization. So this is just really valuable, and this breaks it down to, as if you're a staff member and you want to change what pencils you're using, then you don't have to go to the C-suite or up to the board to make those situations. That was a mundane question, but like small implementation change doesn't make a difference. If you want to do more staff recognition for your intimate team, um, that probably doesn't warrant going all the way up to the board. So it's really important that you understand in your role where you fall within this decision making tree. And so that is the first step. And if we want to go back to 30 days, like first 30 days, who's responsible to make this decision? And then once you have that team in place, then you can put those SMART goals together and put a timeline together.
Yeah, that makes so much sense for what is doable within 30 days. And what would you say should be true by day 90 if that change is actually taking hold?
You should have your goals aligned. You should have your objectives aligned. You should be in action, actually making actionable steps toward making that happen. And you should be reevaluating. So I think 90 days is a good timeline to, no matter where you are in any kind of change management, just to reevaluate, bring the team back together. What's working well? What's not working well? Where are our pain points with this? What's delayed? What do we need to forego? What do we need to implement? And really be adaptable to the change of the change.
The change of the change. I love that. Let's further ground this in real experience. From your work at JFS, can you walk us through a specific example? I know you've given us a few, but another specific example where you led a meaningful change and what that looked like step by step.
Yes. Walking into JFS, they were very heavily focused on fundraising events, and which was lovely. And this goes back to, this is how we always did it. So this is what's comfortable to us, right? Change is uncomfortable, and one of the things I would actually have to say is like getting comfortable with the uncomfortable as you're going through change is a great mindset and a place to be. So the events were very comfortable, and they were very, very classic. I'm saying that nicely. Very classic events. We had a gala, we had a walk. Like there was not a lot of innovation, not a lot of excitement to things. I'm coming into the organization a couple of years after COVID, and so the whole event scene had changed. And there was not any very, very, very little focused on major giving. So we're taking, and we are working with a board who loves events. Man, they really love to pick those napkin colors and and the candles and make sure that we have the right canapes. Like this this is the stuff that they love to do. So we had to let that to had to have a lot of conversation about what does it look like to become a little bit less of a managing board and a little bit more of a governing board. What does it look like to take your hands out of the pot just a little bit? And what does it look like if we were to cancel one of these events? What is the opportunity that those opportunities that are available if we cancel, and what are the opportunities that we lose if we cancel the event? And with the conversation really it turned to, we were hosting this event every year. It was raising 30 or $40,000, which was lovely. It was a beautiful fundraiser, although we looked back over time and the people who were attending were 75% the same people year over year. So if you're talking about trying to do additional outreach and engagement with the community, this was also not the space that was feeding it. And the amount of time and energy and resources it went to putting into an event were just the return on investment was very, very, very minimal. So we decided to let that go and to spend more of my time focusing on major gifts. And through deep diving into the CRM, thank you, Giveffect, because of all the capabilities you have, especially with creating the wealth screening and doing the moves management work that you were able to do. We were able to put together this beautiful um, plan and a beautiful pyramid, if you will, gift pyramid of what was available with the people we had already engaged. And once we were able to focus our time there, we were able to raise I mean, over $1 million. We're going from $30,000 to over 1 million. So I don't know what the percentage change that is. But it really made a significant difference on how we looked at how we were working with our donors, stewarding our donors. But it was people were very, very uncomfortable with the fact that we were having our annual gala on a regular basis.
Interesting. So it sounds like a little bit of resistance may have shown up. What was that resistance and how did you overcome it?
Um, it was that this is how we've always done it. This is what the community expects. This is how we engage with mo the most people in the shortest amount of time. This is how the community knows who we are. And what was realized was that actually wasn't the case at all. And so it did take there was a lot of resistance. There was a lot of hesitation, and it took the time to make the change with leadership support, and they had my back all day long on this. They were able to, and with our results, once you get the results, they're like, "Oh yeah, you're right. You had a good idea. That change was easy. We don't care about that change." But you have to continually work from that and just stay, really staying comfortable in that uncomfortable space for a minute.
Yeah. And did you need to, or if you did, what did you adjust to get more of that buy-in and that, oh yeah, that those results are amazing. But the step before that, what needed to be adjusted? And then you talked about the results, but when did you know it was working?
When we made this, I took some of our most resistant board members aside and had meetings with them and asked how they could help us with this effort. So use them in an advisory capacity, use their Rolodex, if you will, and reminded them why they were passionate about the organization. And once they remembered that passion that was there, they thought, and would have these conversations. What if somebody else in the community has that passion we've just never asked before? And so they said, okay. I said, would you help me talk with somebody who you think that passion might be there? And they said, yeah, sure. We can have that conversation. And when you get them in that room with that other donor and that excitement about what's going on at your organization, just that energy rises. It's so easy for people to start to see the potential for that change and that success coming forward. It's that buy-in. It's you guys. It was individual work. It was time. It was a lot of time and a lot of time management. But it really was that created that success.
Amazing. Now let's switch gears just a little bit. From your work at BeeGood, if you could tell us a little bit, across the organizations you work with, what patterns do you see when change succeeds versus when it stalls?
This is so from a consulting lens, I get the opportunity to work with a lot of different organizations, big, small, medium, leaders who are super coachable, leaders who are super resistant, team members who are de-energized, team members who want to make a bunch of change. I get to see it all, and I love that I get to be a part of all of that. Um, when you have a leader who is interested in personal and professional development, when you have a leader who spends the time to learn more about what technology is available or what efficiencies are available out there, when you have a leader who's willing to spend the time and energy to bring in a consultant, frankly, because they see that there's a problem and then they see that that change needs to be made, that is when you see the beginning of what successful change and change that sticks look like. When you a consultant's brought in, like and this has happened, a board member has brought a consultant in, or the board has decided to bring a consultant in, that feels like you're going to the principal's office, right? That if you're a leader and your board tells you you're not doing good enough and you need to bring a consultant in, the opportunity for the affective change is pretty slim to none because the buy-in isn't there because they aren't seeing it for themselves. They're not seeing the change that needs to happen within the organization. And that really will just, again, lead to the deterioration of that organization. You know, really making sure that, and that with this slide, like that you really understand what the quality of the standards that you want to implement to put that change forward. And that really does come with that coachability and that buy-in. Like what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to achieve together? And what is the quality of that change that we want to make? What energy are we bringing into that? We want to make sure that we implement those feedback mechanisms. So again, you bring somebody in or you're implementing some kind of change. Does your team feel safe to come to you to be like, yeah, this isn't working? Do they feel safe to be like, you know what, this is working, but what if we tried this? Do they feel safe bringing change to you to begin with? And do you, as somebody who potentially has to go to a leader, do you feel safe, and respected and valued to be able to share what's possible? We talked, yeah, we
Oh, go
talked
ahead.
about we talked about like monitoring that change regularly, be ready to adapt to the change to the change to the adapt to the change. Again, regular check-ins and build those into your plan. Don't just say, don't, schedule them in your calendar, put them in your timeline of how you're going to achieve these goals, these check-ins to reevaluate where we're going with things. Encourage that culture of quality. Everybody's in this changed, everybody's in it to win it. Sure, you're going to gripe about it. Sure, things aren't going to go well. But if you ultimately all have the commitment to support each other, if you're all coming from a good place to implement that change, the likelihood of it succeeding will be much more successful. And yeah, just continue to adapt.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add and further explore is what do strong leaders do differently? And I think you're starting to touch on that a little bit in regards to um, implementing feedback mechanisms, being a leader who is open to hearing from your team, so that they're comfortable bringing these ideas to you. But what else do you think really a strong leader does differently?
A strong leader is going to be an advocate for their team. And a strong leader is going to be even more of an advocate for the mission of the organization. You're going to do what is best for the organization, best for your clients, best for your partners, best for your team beyond your ego feeding the organization. There's a lot of organizations that I work with that have been built on somebody who has uh, an amazing idea to create a nonprofit. Something's impacted their lives in a certain way, and they want to figure out how to give back. These people, which is a beautiful thing. Like they're figuring out what their contribution in the world looks like. But sometimes they're not great business leaders. Sometimes they don't know their own strengths and their own challenges. Sometimes they get in their own way, beautifully. And I think that, and we all do that, right? That's a part of all of us, but being self-aware and really thinking about the bigger contribution of what your organization and what you're trying to do in the world and lead from there is where you're going to find good leadership.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, we're getting close to when we're going to start take audience questions. So, if you haven't put your questions in the question icon at the bottom of your screen, please go ahead and do that. But one last question for this portion of our program today is, when it comes to implementing change, what does a future-ready nonprofit actually do differently in practice?
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to say is that, and this might go back to your leadership question as well. So be a philomath. So what's a philomath? Like, what is that kind of Latin word on my screen right here? It's somebody who loves learning. So you, as a leader, dedicating time again on your calendar or a percentage of your time that is non-negotiable to continue to learn. Educate yourself on leadership practices. Educate yourself on change management. Educate yourself on the newest and latest technology that's available out there. Educate yourself on AI. Educate yourself on uh, donor advised funds. Educate yourself on your software that you're using. I keep using technology, but spend actual time doing continued learning. Because you will not be able to forward your organization if you stay stuck in the past. The other thing is being team led and not leadership led. I think that's something that we all need to look at as leaders. As you're working with your team, how much opportunity do you give your team? How much opportunity do you give them to do more education and learning? How much opportunity do you give them to feel valued, to share their voice, to bring an idea to you? I think it's really important that as you're looking to the future, I mean, for I've been like I said, I've been doing this work for 20 years. I could be that person who's stuck in the old cycle of this is how we have just always done it. I try not to be, and maybe everything I'm saying to you today is like, wow, that person needs to take her own advice. But but being forward thinking, I've got team members who bring things to me all the time. I'm so grateful for that. The collective brain is so much better than the one brain. So being team led is the other part of it. And then the whole, said I mentioned this earlier, but the whole life cycle of nonprofits. Be ready for the rebirth because if not, you will, your organization will start to sometimes there's a big like skull and crossbones here at the end of this bell curve that just says your organization dies. So the whole idea is as you get going and rolling, depending on what the age of your organization and the progress of your organization, like I said, you have a great idea, something's been impactful in your life. You want to turn that impact back around to the community. That's great. You're in startup, you're in growth, you're in high energy, you're at the vitality stage where you really know what's going on. You're intimate with your mission, you're building your donor database, your clients are happy, your programming is there. And then you have that regeneration where you're getting sustainable, moving over and over and over again. But if you get stuck there, you get stuck in that just like you're just chugging. And it's beautiful. Like I know every nonprofit I've ever been a part of, being sustainable is the dream, right? We want to be able to do these programs over and over and over again. That is beauty to one extent. But if it gets dull, if you've got team members who aren't energized, who aren't bringing new ideas to you, who don't have the care, the love of the organization, the same way that a leadership may or the founder of the organization may, you're going to get to that spot. So really being a patient, being cognitive of where you are on this lifestyle or life cycle, I'm sorry, is really important to future ready leaders.
This is so helpful. And just one comment that I wanted to make is that first step in that graph you just showed or the map or the one prior is making time to learn.
Mm-hmm.
This really resonates with me because we've really come full circle from starting off next. For those of you who joined the keynote, Trista Harris, who is a philanthropic futurist, she was talking about saving 5% of your week for future thinking. And I think that this completely aligns with how we started, this discussion yesterday and now how we're closing out, this portion of next is really making room to follow what Trista was saying and also now Melissa and how to become future ready. So it really aligns. Um, so thank you. I now want to open this up for questions, for our audience questions. So let me just navigate here and see the questions that we have. Um, all right. I'm going to take one question from the audience first, and then I actually have a burning question that I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
So here we go. How do you balance major gift asks of individuals if they're also involved and giving towards events, as in they're a major sponsor at events?
Okay, great question. Um, one is again that transparency. Have you had the conversation with them about the way that they want to be recognized and the way that they want to give? Have they told you that they only want to give to one? Because I will tell you, lots of times they're happy to give more. If they have the capacity to do it, you just have to figure out how to ask. But you have to honor them and where they are. Um, and uh, Sometimes again, it's because it's just what they've been doing over time, and they don't know what opportunities are there instead. So that would be my quick little advice for you is to have that deep, intimate conversation with them about um, how they're giving, what's important to their giving, really knowing why they give. A lot of time we don't, we have no idea. Is it tax purposes? Is it because they want notoriety? Is it because somebody asked them one time and they just do it habitually? Is it because they love their organization and they think that's the best way to bring more people to your event? Do you really know why they're giving to that event as opposed to giving in other places? And then I also would say is like, what problem are you solving for that donor? Not what problem are they solving for you?
A great response. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
One question for you that I think will resonate with a lot of folks here today is something that many of you all don't know, but Melissa and her team, when they decided to go with Giveffect, actually migrated to the platform in just 6 weeks. So they did their data migration and their onboarding. So a question for you is, how'd you get that buy-in, number one? And then how did you move so quickly?
We the buy-in really truly was, and actually I heard this, somebody else said this in the earlier session from with the smaller organizations, that we were the way that we got the official thumbs up was that we ran the return on investment of all of these other programs and services that we were using, broken up services that didn't speak to each other, the inefficiencies of these antiquated systems, the amount of time we were trying to talk back and forth to these systems, wasting time, versus what the cost was of Giveffect to have everything all in one space. It was almost a little bit of a no-brainer when it came to making that happen. And I'm grateful to be able to put things all in one spot. The implementation of the 6 week transferring of data and all of that, I'm going to give kudos to the Giveffect team. You all made it so easy for us to transfer as much information. Again, we were coming from 4 different databases of information that you guys made it so easy for us to set it up to transfer things over. I will say there were very, very, very like teeny tiny things that we had to fix after the data transfer, data migration, but it was pretty seamless overall. And that we had the right team in place. So we dedicated one of our team members to be working on that data for that 6 weeks. So it was really important that we did that. Also, that ended up saving us a ton of money. Believe it or not, even though that person wasn't working on other things, it was really valuable. And over time, the return on investment has just exploded since then.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be more, like we said, future building and not just thinking of the today when
Yep.
deciding on making a change when it comes to a tool like that. And I know data migration is a very scary word for so many people. So thank you for sharing your experience there. So let's take another audience question. Um, This one's from Catherine Garrett. Are there sources you recommend to concentrate on for oops, learning more about leadership, change management, and using AI strategically?
Yes, I can give you a couple of places. First off, I gotta not just plug in Giveffect to Giveffect, but Giveffect has some really wonderful courses that they give on the regular, and they do their quick their speed dating learning, their speed learning sessions that are really valuable, and they're really a great place for you to connect with other people. So you can even get that like one-on-one time with some of the people that share in that space. I really enjoy freewill.com, freewill.com. They do weekly presentations on all kinds of different things. They're a planned giving platform, which is just fascinating, but they do all kinds of information across the board, whether you are learning about, transferring of securities, or you're talking about life insurance, or you're talking about AI, or you're talking about annual appeals. They have a lot of really great information. And then if you want to stick to the tech side of things, the nonprofit technology group, the N10 group, is really, really wonderful. Again, they do a lot of free webinars and a lot of free learning. They have a conference every year, which is also really fascinating as far as tech is concerned. And so those are just some three kind of off the top of my head places for you to continually learn. I would also, on the leadership side, Catherine, uh, I'm a big podcast listener, and I'm a big like self-help kind of, positive mindset kind of thing. So I would highly recommend anything like um what am I now? I'm going to forget their names. Like anything Ed Milet, there's the Mentor Mindset podcast, Tony Robbins. There's just a bunch of great places that whether you are like listening to it while you're driving around the car or when you're getting ready in the morning, it's just those things that kind of get in your head that can kind of teach you how to be a really great leader.
Thank you. And this is just a quick question, but I think it'll help um, put more into perspective for everyone um, and this is specific to JFS, I believe. What size is your organization? How many staff slash volunteers do you have? And how many unique programs do you run?
Beautiful. And I probably should have answered that at the beginning for some context. So sorry it's coming late. We have about 150 employees. We work with over 700 active volunteers every year. I think we've got over 2,500 in our database, but 700 active every year. Wait, what was the third question?
Oh, how many unique programs do you
Unique
run?
programs, yes.
Mhm.
So I wish we could count. We have six core program areas, but they each have additional program areas underneath them. I always like to laugh, and I think it's a beautiful thing, but that we're the Cheesecake Factory of social services here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Cheesecake Factory menu, that big giant menu, they can get anything you want. That's how we are. So it's a massive undertaking to support all of those different program areas.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. So we are going to move to our last question. I know there's some questions that did not get answered, but I know Melissa has graciously said you can get in touch with her to ask more questions and stay connected. So Nicole put that in the chat as well as you can see here on the screen. But our last question is, if every leader here committed to one action next week, what should it be?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh, and I should say, we have just 2 minutes for this response because I know you
Okay.
could say a lot.
Okay. I will keep it short. Literally, when we are done with this in 2 minutes, go to your calendar, schedule 1 hour, unbreakable 1 hour, where you will deep dive into what the future of your organization can look like. And the deep dive can be internal. The deep dive can be doing some research. The deep dive can be looking into a new platform. But dedicate that time to what the future of your organization will look like.
I love that takeaway. Thank you so much. So don't leave yet, but just a quick couple things before we end our day too. So first off, Melissa, thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, we appreciate you sharing all your wisdom and experience with all of us here today. And like I mentioned before, if the audience would like to get in touch, Nicole did share contact information in the chat as well as Melissa had shared on the screen. But this was such a just a practical and honest look at what it really takes to lead change. So thank you again. And thank you to everyone who joined us over the past 2 days. We've explored together so many things, so many ideas, and it isn't just a set of ideas, it's a shift in how nonprofits operate. We started with vision and what it means to build what comes next. We explored how organizations are strengthening fundraising, working more collaboratively, and building systems that actually support their work. And today we brought it down to what it takes to make that real. Because building a future ready nonprofit doesn't happen all at once. And that's exactly what Melissa had talked a bit about today. It happens through a series of intentional decisions led with clarity, supported by the right systems, and carried forward by your team. And one theme that has come up again and again is that the right systems matter. When your data, your teams, and your workflows are all connected, everything becomes easier to align, measure, and move forward. And that is exactly what Giveffect is designed to support and why we put Next 2026 on. Before we wrap up, I want to share something we very, very rarely do. So if you book a strategy call with Giveffect, by March 31st, you'll receive free data migration and $1,000 off your first year subscription if you decide to move forward by June 30th. So I know that's a mouthful, but our strategy calls are not demos. Our strategy calls are working sessions to first align on what are your goals? Um, what are your challenges? What are those points of friction that are really at the root of why you're even considering a technology change? So again, this is an offer we very, very rarely give, and so something to think about. You can use the link on the screen, scan the QR code, or grab the link in the chat. And now let's go ahead and announce today's Coffee on Us winners. So here are all of the winners from today. So congratulations, Darby, Dr. Dot. I know Dr. Dot Hollins, I believe she made some comments in the chat today. So thank you so much for participating. Jennifer Maybaum, Glory Mar, you also participate in the chat today, so thank you. And Angela Dredden. So again, congratulations on getting Coffee on Us, and you will receive your gift card via email, I believe on Friday. So stay tuned. And finally, if you've been thinking about how all this actually comes together in practice, tomorrow's Tech Spotlight session will take you behind the scenes and show you exactly how these strategies and workflows are set up inside Giveffect. Thank you so much for being a part of Next. We're so glad you joined us, and we hope this gives you the clarity and confidence to start building what comes next. Thank you all.